Hello, my name is Caitlin Brooke Locklear, and today I'll be presenting on the crisis theory and its implications for social work practice. Okay, so the crisis theory, it's exactly how it sounds. It's applicable to populations who are experiencing extreme stress due to an unexpected crisis in their lives. So, listed here, I have the structured stages that social workers are obligated to attain to when utilizing the crisis theory. So the first one is rapid establishment of a constructive social worker slash client relationship. So the crisis theory emphasizes social worker and client relationship in an effort to provide the best care. So that would be the first step. Eliciting and encouraging the client's expression of painful feelings. So this just means asking probing questions about the stress or the trauma in the client's life and asking them how they feel about it and how it's changed their lives. The assessment. So the assessment needs to be rapid but thorough enough in order to construct an effective intervention. Restoration of cognitive functioning. So after the initial assessment is done, the social worker will share their conclusion about what the cause of the crisis is, the meaning of the meaning of the crisis to the client, and go over the client's reactions in order to establish cognitive functioning or re-establish cognitive functioning. Planning and implementing intervention. So this is something that'll be done with the client to determine what intervention is best suitable based on the client's needs. Environmental work. So environmental work just basically secures and develops material and social supports for the client as needed. And then ending the intervention and follow up to evaluate if the intervention was effective. Okay, so as stated previously, crisis intervention can be applied to populations that have experienced trauma. So, crisis interventions are meant to help clients regain a sense of equilibrium in their lives. Experiencing a trauma that is significant can cause a lack of emotional stability, and crisis interventions help clients reestablish emotional stability. So, when an individual reaches an inability to effectively cope with the trauma, crisis intervention is needed. So, some examples of populations of people who may benefit from crisis interventions include individuals who have experienced suicidal ideation, sexual assault, personal loss, intimate partner violence, and post traumatic stress disorder. And so, all of these that I just listed are considered to be major public health problems. Um, 1 out of every 6 women has been a victim of an attempted or completed rape in her lifetime. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death, and post traumatic stress disorder is extremely common, especially for military personnel, so crisis intervention is extremely important. Okay, so intervention strategies that are conducted through the crisis theory must be adopted from other social work practice theories, such as cognitive theory, ego psychology theory, and structural family theory, just to name a few. So, crisis intervention involves a solution focused approach which is consistent with the strengths based perspective used by social workers. Robert's 7 stage crisis intervention model can be applied during the crisis intervention. And so, really quickly, the first step is to plan and conduct a biopsychosocial assessment of the client. The second step would be to establish a rapport and a collaborative relationship. Third step would be to identify a presenting problem. The fourth step is to explore feelings and emotions. The fifth step is to generate and explore alternatives, such as untapped resources or coping skills. The sixth step is to develop and formulate an action plan. And the seventh step is to complete the follow up. So most of those sound very similar to the previous steps that I just went over, but this specific intervention model is generally used with most crisis interventions. So, although the crisis theory does not offer specific, unique interventions, the crisis theory consists of 2 unique factors. And so that's that interventions are short term, but the social worker is actively involved with the client and his or her significant others. And the social worker emphasizes environmental factors in an effort to link the client to support. So that is also consistent with the systems theory that is predominantly used in the social work profession. Okay, so as I was completing my research, I ran across this article that I found to be extremely interesting and important. So, Meyer, Lewis, and James discussed in their article how several models are used for crisis interventions, and they talked about how the task model could be applied to crisis intervention in an effort to make crisis interventions more effective. So, assessment, safety, and support are considered to be continuous tasks. They are listed in no particular order and they're continuously performed throughout the intervention. This allows social workers to adjust the intervention if needed and meet the client's needs as they surface from moment to moment. And so the following four tasks are considered to be focus tasks. So that would be contact, reestablishing control, problem solving, follow up. Okay, so they can be completed more or less in order. So for example, if a social worker comes into contact with a client who is hysterical, it would be most appropriate to jump to the reestablishing control task and then revisit the contact task once control has been reestablished. So, utilizing these specific tasks with crisis interventions may result in increased positive outcomes when using crisis interventions. Okay. Art-based therapy. Art-based therapy is a relatively common crisis intervention that I ran across. So, art therapy has been used with clients that have suffered from various traumas such as intimate partner violence, sexual assault, and abuse. Each of these qualifies as a significant trauma that requires crisis intervention. Sometimes it can be difficult for clients to verbalize negative emotions, so art therapy can help them express their emotions without being required to verbalize them. So, that's one of the benefits of using art based therapy. It can allow clients to give a voice to their experiences and allow them to express themselves in a way that doesn't require them to actually verbalize their feelings. In addition, this intervention can serve as a form of self care and it also can foster social support because it's generally used in group sessions and it reduces the feeling of isolation among the clients. So, art based interventions can be used to stabilize a crisis and provide a sense of stability. It is used for counselors, it's useful for counselors to process with their clients the symbols that clients create in their art, as well as to discuss what these symbols mean to the client. Okay. The Family Crisis Intervention Program. So, FCIP is a short term intervention for families experiencing an array of crises. The trained and supervised Family Crisis Intervention Program workers served small caseloads and they provide concrete services, advice, and referrals for aftercare and follow up. And so, in the first session, cooperatively with the family, specific short term intervention goals are formulated and a first safety assessment of the situation is made. In the remaining 4 weeks, the family situation and specifically child safety are assessed, mostly during home visits. 2 or 3 home visits are conducted each week, especially in the first phase of the intervention. In the third week of the intervention, based on the client's needs and the collected information, an analysis is made and an advice is written by the FCIP worker, if necessary, including a suggestion for follow up. So FCIP ends with a final session in which the goals are evaluated. Program fidelity needs to be kept while implementing this particular intervention. And so FCIP can also organize additional care, such as financial support or individual therapy if necessary. And so the social and professional support systems, such as the extended family, friends, and possible professionals who are involved with the family, are also mapped and activated. So this is all consistent with those initial tasks that I discussed on the second slide. Okay. Okay, psychological first aid. So psychological first aid is extremely common. It's used in several crisis in situations